Hey guys, welcome back to TaleTime. In this video, my toxic parents demanded I give my newborn son to my useless brother because he deserves a child more than me. Here is what happened. Let's dive right into the video. The title story starts like this. I can still vividly remember the day my life changed forever. The day I became a father. Holding my newborn son Jacob in my arms, I felt a love and sense of purpose unlike anything I'd ever experienced before. His tiny fingers wrapped around mine, his big blue eyes gazing up at me with pure innocence and trust. In that moment, I made a silent vow to be the father he deserved, to give him the caring and supportive upbringing I never had. You see, my own parents were, well, let's just say they took the concept of tough love to abusive, toxic levels. Nothing I ever did was good enough in their eyes. No accomplishment, no achievement could meet their punishingly high standards and twisted expectations. I endured years of harsh criticism, demeaning insults, and blatant favoritism towards my younger golden child brother Kyle. They always saw me as the family's black sheep, the irredeemable disappointment that could never compare to their precious golden child. My brother could literally do no wrong in their eyes, while I faced constant derision no matter how hard I tried to earn their approval and affection. I remember sobbing myself to sleep countless nights, longing for just one shred of kindness or acceptance from my so-called family. So then, by the time I turned 18, the emotional scars had become too much to bear. I packed up what little belongings I had and ran away, cutting all ties and vowing to build the life of independence and self-respect they had always denied me. It was not easy. I couch-surfed with friends for a while, took a slew of dead-end jobs to get by, but I persevered through the struggle, kept my head down, and worked tirelessly to put myself through college. Eventually, that determination and self-belief paid off. I landed a solid corporate job, climbed up the ranks through sheer hard work and competence. Over the next few years, I bought my own place and met the most incredible woman who became my wife, and at last felt like I had persevered through the darkness of my youth to find genuine happiness. Then little Jacob came along, and any lingering scars or insecurities from my childhood faded away in the blinding light of the truest joy I'd ever known. I would never let my own flesh and blood experience the trauma I had myself. My son was my world now, and I was going to give him the nurturing family life I had always craved. Well, at least that is what I thought, until they showed up again like a recurring nightmare I could not wake up from. It started about 2 weeks after Jacob was born. I came home from work to a strange mud-caked van parked in our driveway and unfamiliar voices emanating from inside the house. I walked in to find my parents and Kyle having a heated argument with my wife Holly in our own living room. How they even knew where we lived, I still have no idea. My dad's booming voice cut through the noise as soon as I appeared. The wayward son has arrived. Come say hello to your family." I immediately felt my chest tighten with dread and panic, like the weight of years of unresolved trauma came crashing down on me all at once. What are you doing here? How did you even find this place? "Oh, Raymond, don't be so rude," my mom chided through her sickly sweet tone dripped with familiar condescension. "We heard the good news about our new grandchild and simply had to pay a visit. We are family after all," my brother Kyle sneered from the couch, somehow already making himself at home in my house uninvited. "And you know, blood is thicker than water, which is more than you could understand, you ungrateful little—" "Enough!" I shouted, my protective parental instincts already in full force. I turned to Holly, who looked utterly distraught and helpless. "Honey, can you take Jacob upstairs for a bit? I need to have a talk with these people here." Once Holly had taken Jacob to the nursery, my voice lowered to a furious whisper. "You people have a lot of nerve showing up here out of nowhere after all these years. In my home, where my wife and child live." My dad predictably laughed it off and said, "Oh, don't be so dramatic. We are here to celebrate our reunion as a family. Although I must say, the way you ran off without so much as a word betrayed a serious lack of loyalty and commitment on your part." "Loyalty?" I shot back. "I put up with years of abuse and manipulation from you too. And instead of showing even an ounce of parental support or caring, you heaped endless unfair expectations on me while bending over backwards for your precious golden child over here." I spat glaring daggers at my own brother. Mom shook her head in faint concern and said, "We only raised you with enough tough love to make you into a successful, respectable adult who appreciates the value of hard work. Is that so wrong?" "No, you didn't. You set me up to fail from day one with your twisted games and non-stop belittling." My voice steadily rose as years of bottled emotions came rushing to the surface. I will never forget the time Dad told me that I had the artistic talent of a moose taking a crap in the woods when I was 7. Or Mom, you said the only thing I would amount to in life is operating a fryer at some burger joint. "No, you were not exactly proving us wrong, now were you?" Kyle interjected smugly, picking at his nails. My blood was boiling. He always did have a knack for kicking me while I was already down. I took a deep breath and met my parents' gazes one by one. Resolve crystallized inside me. I was not that powerless child anymore. I was now a grown man with a family of my own. "Look, I don't know what your game is here, but I want you to listen very carefully," I said in an icy tone. "You don't get to just barge back into my life after all this time spewing the same toxic, demeaning BS. Especially not after abandoning me to fend for myself as a scared 18-year-old kid without a dime or place to go. You made your bed then, and now you can lie in it, without me or my family." The smug demeanor fell from my dad's face, replaced by that all-too-familiar look of paternal disappointment and displeasure. He opened his mouth to speak, but I cut him off. "No, you had your turn. Now it's my time to lay down the law as the head of this household," I declared, standing as tall and firm as I could muster. "Until you show me some basic human decency and respect, none of you are welcome back in this house or around my son ever again. So get out before I call the police and have you trespassed." I could see Kyle about to unleash another cutting remark, but my mom grabbed his arm and gave a reluctant shake of her head. She knew I meant business. For maybe the first time ever, they realized they could not control me anymore. As my dad angrily marched towards the door, Mom lingered back for a few extra seconds and said, "I hope you will reconsider this hateful outburst of yours once you have calmed down a bit. Don't forget that we are still flesh and blood. Family means more than you think." She cooed those last few words in that disgustingly manipulative tone I recognized so well from her. Then she gave a sad shake of her head and followed the others out to their van. I stood there near the front door catching my breath, adrenaline still pumping hot through my veins. Holly emerged from upstairs, concern etched across her face. Are you okay? What did they want?" she asked hesitantly. Pulling her into a tight, reassuring embrace, I let out a heavy sigh. "Just the same narcissistic entitlement they've always had. Don't worry, you and Jacob are my family now, and I promise we are never going to be pulled back into their toxic world ever again." For a few blissful weeks, it seemed like I was right. Life returned to normal as the joyful chaos of parenthood consumed us. I allowed myself to naively believe my parents had gotten the hint to leave us be. Well, how wrong I was. It all started with little things at first, coming home from work to find dead squirrels nailed to our front door, opening the mailbox to remove a smeared soiled diaper, hang up calls at all hours of the night, disrupting Jacob's sleep, etc. At first, I dismissed it as teenage pranks or random harassment. This was a decent suburban neighborhood though, but no community was immune to the occasional bad seeds. I told my wife Holly not to worry, that it would stop eventually, but it only escalated from there. Soon it graduated to outright vandalism, profane words spray-painted across our garage door, eggs and vegetables splattered all over our cars. The anonymity of it all made it feel even more sinister, like we were being hunted by some unseen predator. The final straw came when I peered out the front window before leaving for work one morning. There, crudely carved into our front lawn, were the words, "Give him to Kyle or else." A cold spike of realization shot through me as I read those ghastly words. It was no prankster behind these deranged acts. It was the same vile people that had haunted me since childhood. My parents, aka my family. I'll admit in that moment I froze with the same helpless old fear I thought I had conquered long ago, the dread of having to face off against those people again after everything, knowing there was no low they wouldn't stoop to. My wife saw me standing there shaken and quickly came over to see what was wrong. "Oh my god, Ray, you don't think—" "No, there's no mistaking it," I growled through gritted teeth. They did this because I set boundaries and stood up to them. Because in their sick, entitled minds they actually expected me to give them Jacob. The very notion made me feel physically ill to hand my precious newborn son over to those depraved, abusive monsters so they could continue their cycle of torment and abuse with my own son, all because their twisted egos had been bruised. The audacity was almost too much to stomach. Still, angry as I was, the disturbing threat had shaken me. I knew in that moment that we couldn't endure this escalating harassment any longer, not with my son at risk of potential harm. So then I swallowed my pride and made the call I'd hoped I would never have to make. Hello, police? Yes, I urgently need to file a report. And then over the next several days, the responding officers documented all the incidents of harassment, the vandalism on our property, and brought us forms to file for a restraining order against my parents and Kyle. Armed with the restraining order application and police reports, I got in touch with a lawyer to begin exploring any additional legal protections I could secure. To the lawyer's credit, she didn't even blink at the outlandish details of my family's history and the threats they posed. She advised me that becoming proactive with legal deterrence was wise given the dangers of stoking my parents' entitled fury. We immediately filed for the restraining order against all three of them. That first hearing was as emotionally crueling as you would expect. Despite all the documented evidence and case I built against them, my parents still trotted out their tired spiel about wanting to be a family and that all families deserve second chances. Blah blah blah. If I didn't feel so angry, I might have actually pitied what laughable caricatures of human beings they had become. Thankfully, the judge saw right through their victimhood act and interpreted their actions for what they were. A deranged illegal campaign to antagonize me into giving up my own child. Even in front of a judge, they insisted that I would be better off giving my own son to my brother because I apparently don't deserve a child and that I am a terrible father. With an ironclad restraining order officially barring them from coming anywhere near us, I could finally breathe a long sigh of relief. You would think at that point that any sane person would have cut their losses and slinked off to lick their wounds. However, my family's obsession knew no boundaries. Instead of respecting the law, they simply turned to more crazy means in pursuit of their demented grandparent goals. It started with them somehow obtaining a set of keys to Holly's car, no clue if they picked her lock or something. Either way, I started noticing little things moved around inside, seat positions altered and such. I raised a concern to Holly, but we initially convinced ourselves that we were just being paranoid. Then she brought Jacob in his carrier into the house one day and let out a blood-curdling shriek. I came rushing over to find her beside herself with horror, tucked inside Jacob's carrier, positioned so he would inevitably swallow it, was a tiny, shimmering handful of metallic, sharp objects. I felt the blood drain from my face as the full sickening realization hit me. My parents, my own flesh and blood, had somehow obtained access to my child and deliberately put his life in danger. All because of their twisted, depraved obsession with claiming Jacob as their own grandchild, no matter the cost. In that moment, a protective fury like nothing I'd ever felt before consumed me. Gone were any lingering shreds of empathy, of seeing them as misguided family members who merely needed boundaries enforced. They had committed an unforgivable act that eclipsed everything before. Holly was beside herself, cradling Jacob and sobbing in a panic. I immediately gathered them both and rushed out to the car, my mind racing. First, I drove to the pediatrician's office and had Jacob examined while Holly tried her best to compose herself. Despite the traumatic experience, the doctor reported no serious harm, and all in all, he was okay. I held my brave little boy close and whispered trembling reassurances, inwardly churning with a potent cocktail of relief and unadulterated rage. At this point, I did not care what lines had to be crossed. They would pay for threatening the life of my child. Our first stop was the police station, where I recounted the incident with grim urgency. The officers who had previously documented my family's harassment were equally outraged by this unconscionable escalation. They advised me to pursue an emergency extension on the restraining order and agreed to open an investigation into how my parents acquired access to Holly's car. One thing was for sure, this was no longer a matter of simple family harassment, this was criminal endangerment of a child. Next, I made arrangements for Holly and Jacob to stay with her parents out of town for the foreseeable future. at least until the dust settled legally with my family's violations. As much as it pained me to have Jacob out of my sight after what happened, his safety and Holly's were the top priorities now. Only once I secured their relocation did I allow my focus to shift fully towards retribution. I will spare you the grueling legal details of the hearings, court proceedings, and the ongoing police investigations over the following weeks and months, but suffice to say, mountains of evidence were compiled detailing each and every unforgivable act, from the vandalism to the hanging threats to the unfathomable car sabotage. My lawyer was meticulous, determined to ensure that we threw every possible legal sledgehammer at them and that they faced the harshest penalties for violating the restraining order in the first place and endangering the life of my child. What I can tell you is that my so-called family did not even attempt plausible deniability. They unashamedly admitted to everything, spinning it as some twisted campaign of grandparental rights for Jacob's own benefit. My mother even had the audacity to claim that they only spiked the baby carrier because they assumed I was an unfit, negligent father denying Jacob access to his grandparents. "He is our grandchild too, you realize?" she sneered from behind the glass partition during a court deposition. "What kind of sick person would deny their own child access to a loving extended family? The only one putting Jacob at risk here is you and your stubbornness." I could only sit there in stunned disgust, faintly shaking with rage at her deluded rationalizations. In their minds, she and my father were justified in any demented action, no matter how reprehensible or outright criminal it was, as if they were entitled to him. When the final court date arrived, I vividly remember the hushed mutters and scowls as the full details were laid bare before the judge. The harassment, vandalism, threats, the tampering with Holly's car, and sheer disregard for my son's safety, it left even the most veteran court officials visibly shaken. My parents sat completely dispassionate through it all, as if they had done nothing wrong. My brother Kyle even seemed to grasp the severity of their actions based on his expression. At long last, the judge cleared her throat and turned a stern, furious gaze towards them. "In all my years presiding over this court, I can say with certainty that I've never borne witness to a more reprehensible, unconscionable display of depravity and blatant disregard for human life," she began in a tone dripping with unrestrained condemnation. The judge's voice rang out through the courtroom, stern and unwavering. "The ceaseless campaign of harassment, intimidation, and outright threats against an innocent child you claim to care for demonstrates the polar opposite of proper grandparental conduct." She paused to sweep her gaze over my parents, disgust etched into her features. "Your actions, and especially violating the restraining order, go far beyond the territory of a mere family dispute." My mother's mouth twitched as if to protest, but the judge silenced her with a fierce look. "You have willfully put an infant's life at risk through harassment and sabotage, not out of love, but out of sheer arrogant disregard for the rule of law and common human ethics." The judge took a deep breath, seemingly recomposing herself from the intensity of her rebuke. When she spoke again, her tone carried the weight of finality. "In light of the grievous violations against OP, his wife, and their child, I'm levying the absolute maximum penalties this court can impose. You will surrender yourselves into immediate custody to serve the full jail sentences allowed by statute for charges including stalking, harassment, vandalism, child endangerment, and violating the restraining order. You are henceforth barred from any and all contact with the Hammond family, either directly or through third parties, lest you face further enhanced penalties for contempt." The judge's gavel struck the bench with a crack of condemnation, sealing their fates. As court officers swiftly surrounded them to take them into custody, Kyle gaped stunned disbelief while my parents merely sat impassive, as if the verdict did not even register on their radar of oh-so self-importance. Justice, so long denied to me by these wicked people, had at last been served in the most brutally poetic way possible. Their chilling lack of remorse as they were carted off only solidified that they were incapable of ever being part of mine or Jacob's lives. In the aftermath, Jacob and Holly and I returned home and things slowly trickled back to a calmer version of normalcy. We simply enjoyed the beautiful simplicity of being a happy family again, no longer stalked by my ridiculous, crazy family. Nowadays, as I tuck Jacob into bed each night, I could only feel immense gratitude for the life and loved ones I fought to build out of nothing. And yeah guys, I'm so happy for OP that everything turned out well in the end and that the family got what they deserved. I really hope these terrible people don't see the light of day again for at least the next decade. If you enjoy the relationship stories, then please don't forget to subscribe to TaleTime for daily relationship uploads. We very much appreciate your support. Thank you so much, and we will see you again tomorrow.